everyone. This is Courtney back in my little book nook, and got a little special guest today. This is Pippa. Say hi, Pippa. Say hi, Internet. Yeah. She gets a little grumpy and grouchy, but this is my baby. This is my doggie. So, she's being a little nosy, but she usually just lays in my room when I'm recording these videos, but she decided to be nosy today, didn't you? Didn't you? Okay. All right. Go on. Go on. You behave. So, last time I mentioned that I was going to be going into something a little darker in the themes of the books that I read. Not too dark. I guess the main name for it would be Gothic horror. And one of the authors that is best at defining Gothic horror would be V.C. Andrews. I also mentioned last time that I went on a major book haul when I was down in Kentucky visiting my family, and at Half Price Books I picked up a bunch of V.C. Andrews novels, a series that I have not read. So I have not read any of these books that I picked up yet. The only series of books that I have read by V.C. Andrews is the Dollenganger series, which is Flowers in the Attic, and the books after it, which kind of becomes a formula for these V.C. Andrews series. They focus on a main character through the first 2 or 3 books, and then the books focus on their children, or mostly their children. And then a prequel book, the last in the series, focuses on a mother or a grandmother of the main character. So, and then V.C. Andrews does have some standalone novels, the most famous one being My Sweet Audrina. And so I am going to go through my V.C. Andrews collection and a couple other books by another author that maybe I'll get to in this video, or maybe I'll make it a second part. So I've got Pippa here at my feet, so if you kind of see me leaning down, it's me petting her to keep her kind of docile. So, she'll be a good girl, She's a good girl, aren't you, Pippa? So, first up are the books in the Dollenganger series, beginning with Flowers in the Attic, followed by Petals on the Wind. The third is If There Be Thorns. The fourth is Seeds of Yesterday. And the fifth one is Garden of Shadows. So, the basic plot of Flowers in the Attic follows the Dollenganger children, oldest son Christopher, oldest daughter Kathy, and twins Corey and Carrie, and their mother Corinne, who, at the beginning of the book, the children's father and Corinne's husband, Christopher Sr., dies in a car accident. So they end up losing their house that they live in, and they're forced to go to Virginia and stay at Foxworth Hall with Corinne's parents, Malcolm and Olivia. A long time ago, Corinne was disinherited from her father's estate, but she's coming back because he's dying, and she's trying to gain his love again to be put back into his will. And the children are forced to stay upstairs, and they're locked away from the rest of the world, and it follows them, taking refuge in the attic, which the grandmother lets them do, and to make it like home for Corey and Carrie, they put up paper flowers, hence Flowers in the Attic. and almost everybody's either heard of it or seen it or read the book. I actually got Flowers in the Attic as a book when I was 16 years old, and a lot of people say that, when they were younger, their parents would let them read it, couldn't find it like in libraries and stuff, and it's because most of V.C. Andrews' books kind of deal with sort of incestuous elements. So, but I got it when I was 16. Who bought it for me? My mom and my dad. So I was never really restricted in stuff that I could watch or read or listen to. So, but it's the main premise of Flowers in the Attic. Petals on the Wind follows Kathy, Chris, and Carrie after they are able to leave the attic. Unfortunately, spoiler, if anybody hasn't read it, Corey dies. Oh, I won't give away how he dies. But they run away and they end up down in South Carolina. And the setting of the book, Flowers in the Attic, started in the 50s. So this kind of then goes in like the early 1960s. So they're on a bus trying to head to Florida to join the circus. And they run into a large black woman named Penny. She can't talk, but she can write. And she takes them to the doctor that she works for, Dr. Paul Sheffield. And he ends up, adopting them. I kind of want to say he takes them on more as like wards, but they do, take on his last name. And there's sort of a kind of a sexual attraction between Kathy and Paul is a lot older than Kathy, of course. And pretty soon she also gets enrolled into a ballet school where she meets a male ballet dancer named Julian Marquette, and Julian ends up developing feelings for Kathy, and of course, being in the attic for so long, Chris and Kathy kind of turn to each other, which brings in that incest element, but Kathy's trying to get on with her life and try to let Christopher, have his own life, and but the main driving thing for Kathy is she wants to get revenge on her mother for locking them in the attic. And that's basically what drives Petals on the Wind. Most of her revenge. And when we get to the third book, If There Be Thorns, it's told from the perspective of Kathy's children. Her oldest son, Jory, is Julian's son. And her youngest son, Bart, is her son between her and her mother's second husband, Bart Winslow. So I'm going past a lot of what happens in Petals on the Wind to tell you about what happens in, If There Be Thorns. But again, you'd have to kind of read it because it's difficult and hard to explain. But then this third book is told from their perspective of growing up with their mother and Chris, who they are raised to believe is Kathy's third husband. Again, so not going to spoil any elements for people who haven't read it before, but an old lady moves in next door, and then Bart begins to start acting very strange and hateful towards his whole family, and I won't go into any more details about that because I don't want to spoil it, but the fourth book is back to Kathy telling the story, but her and Christopher, they are much older now. They're in their late 50s, early 60s, and their children are grown up. They adopted a little girl named Cindy in the third book, and so she's their adopted daughter. And Jory's grown up and married to his childhood sweetheart Melody. They're famous ballet dancers, and Bart's become a very successful businessman, and they're all coming to a rebuilt Foxworth Hall for Bart's birthday, where the will of his grandmother, Chris and Kathy's mother, is going to be read, and it's supposed to be giving him this inheritance. So, but a lot of things happen, a lot of tragedy happens, and soon, it comes kind of almost like a full circle to like the beginning of the book. The 5th book in the series, Garden of Shadows, was not written by V.C. Andrews. In 1987, she passed away from cancer. So her family and her estate afterwards picked up a ghost writer to write underneath her name. It's not really a spoiler anymore. Most people know. His name is Andrew Niederman, and he is an author himself. He's written books that have been turned into movies, so you might know the movies more than the books. The Devil's Advocate, Pin. He has a couple of other books. There was this TV movie based on one of his books. Can't remember exactly what it was called, but it kind of almost has like a disturbing behavior kind of tone to it. But they hired him on to continue to write V.C. Andrews novels, and some of the first ones that he wrote came from notes that she left behind. But the 5th book, Garden of Shadows, is told from the perspective of the grandmother from Flowers in the Attic, and goes through her life starting when she's a young woman, and she becomes married to Malcolm Foxworth, and it kind of gives insight into how she is the way that she is, and kind of gives insight into what the mother did in the past, because we get a mention of it, but it kind of goes into a little bit more detail about what happened. So that is the Dollenganger series, and the Ghost Rider. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Later on, started to write more books that kind of went back to Flowers in the Attic, because it's one of the most successful books of V.C. Andrews' career, and he started writing these books. I've got 2 of them. The first one was Christopher's Diary, Secrets of Foxworth, and it's pretty much Flowers in the Attic told from his perspective. A young woman named Kristen Mastwood, she finds a journal that was written by Christopher Dollenganger telling their story. So, and it continues in Christopher's Diary, Echoes of Dollenganger. I haven't read these yet, but it's still a continuation of finding Christopher's diary. So these are more recent books, but they are part of the Dollenganger series. There's another one that I'm not sure if I want to read yet, since I haven't read through those. It's called A Secret Brother, but it's a continuation of it. The other books that I have by V.C. Andrews that, before I went on this big old book haul, her standalone novel, My Sweet Audrina. Of course, this is like a reprint version of it. It's very big. You can always find it like in the young adult or teen fiction section, whatever bookstore you go to has it. But, so, young adult, teen, whatever you want to call it, you can find it. The main thing about it that I can tell you, so I won't give anything away, is a girl named Audrina Adair. She is supposedly named after her older sister, who they call the first Audrina, who suffered a very terrible fate. And so when the second Audrina was born, she was given her name, and her father gives her a lot of, attention. And then of course there's her mother, and she also has her aunt and her cousin Vera that live with them, and she is always made to try to be perfect, to be like the first Audrina, and father makes her go and sit in the first Audrina's room, and it's a very creepy, real kind of gothic horror kind of book. And of course there's a lot of twists and turns and tragedy and drama, and I don't think this one is very heavy on incest. I mean, it seems like there are small traces about it, but I don't see it as bad as Flowers in the Attic. So, but it's a really good book, and like the Dollenganger series, Flowers in the Attic, Petals on the Wind, it got made into a Lifetime movie, and now they're getting ready to put out Lifetime movies based on the next series that came out after it, called the Castile series, which I'll get to in just a second. But yeah, Lifetime is turning a lot of V.C. Andrews books into movies, and they're pretty good. So if books aren't your thing, even though this talks about books, you can always watch the movies, but it's always better to read the book, because it can put in more detail that you can't put in a lot of movies. Because if they had put in like every single detail that was in these books into movies, they'd probably like 3 or 4 hours long. So they kind of would remind me like when they used to make like those Danielle Steele made for TV movies from her books, and they'd have like parts 1 and parts 2. Yeah, that's pretty much how they would be. But so of course, cashing in on that name, a sequel was written called White Fern, which is the name of the house where the Adair family lives. So it's a sequel to it, and so it's about reading the will of Audrina's father, and so I haven't read it yet, but I have seen that like a lot of people are mixed on it. A lot of people think that there never should have been a sequel written to it, and then of course there are people that wanted a sequel. So the people who didn't want a sequel probably don't like it, and the people who did probably like it. But a lot of them who even wanted a sequel don't seem to like it. So I'm kind of torn on wanting to read it, because sometimes they say things just better be left alone. But who knows? It could be good. So that's pretty much almost all the detail I can give on those for right now. So, but again, that's the main series that I read. But when I was down in Kentucky, I picked up some B.C. Andrews books, and because I hadn't found the young adult section, which I will eventually get to the books that are, those like young adult books from like the early 90s, because we can have a lot of fun with those. But I hadn't gotten to that section yet to find anything, so I went to the horror section and found a couple of books, because like I said, Lifetime's coming out with new movies based on the Castile series by V.C. Andrews. So I wanted to, start reading those, because I'm going to watch the movies, and since I've never read the books, I'll want to see what they be about. Because they're going to do all 5 books in the series. With Flowers in the Attic, they only did the first 4. They have not made a movie for Garden of Shadows. I don't know if they ever will or not. But they're going to do the entire 5 books in the series. So I figured I would try to find some and bring them up here and hope they don't fall. So for the Castile series, I've got 2 books. I actually have the first one, which I did not get at Half Price Books. I actually just got it at Kroger in, the book section. Since they're putting out the movies, this is Heaven, the first book in the Castile series. And so, like I said, I haven't read it yet. But Heavenly Castile, she lives in, the backwoods with her family, with her father and her stepmother. So all of her siblings that she has, they are all her half siblings, because her mother died after giving birth to Heaven, and her father, Luke's, kind of always been resentful of that. So, but soon her stepmother leaves, and her father decides that he is going to sell off his children, and Heaven ends up getting taken in by a couple, and everything goes crazy from there. So, like I said, I've never read these, but since I'm going to watch the movies, why not give it a try? So, of course, this was written back in 1985, and I love this because it's got a list of all these series of books that V.C. Andrews written. The Dollenganger family, My Sweet Audrina, and then of course there's the Castile family, the Cutler family, the Landry family, and the Logan family, and then a bunch of other series that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get into all of them, because mostly it's going to depend if I can find them in thrift stores or half-price books. Because I have nothing against hardback copies. I have hardbacks of some books, but I like these paperback ones because they're smaller and they're more compact. So the next books in that series are Dark Angel, Fallen Hearts, Gates of Paradise, and Web of Dreams. I don't have the other 3, but I found a copy of the last one, Web of Dreams, with kind of more original art. So this book was written in 1990, and this is one of the books not written by V.C. Andrews. I can't remember which one it was in the saga while she was writing it that she passed away. I think it was either Fallen Hearts or Gates of Paradise. So she passed away in the middle of this series, and then the ghostwriter, Andrew Neiderman, continued the series. So, but this one is a pretty cool book, of course, and it goes back and talks about Heaven's mother, Lee, and what drove her, into the arms of Luke Castile and began all the stuff that is about to happen in the beginning of the movies. So, I know as the movies come out, they're supposed to come out every weekend. So I believe this Saturday is when the Heaven movie comes out, and then the following Saturday will be the next one. So, So I'd have to wait until they start putting out like these new editions of them to continue. But if I can find it at a half price books for our thrift store for a much cheaper price, then I'll go ahead and get those. But the next series after that was the Cutler family series. And all I am missing of the Cutler family series is one book. So I'm going to use this reference guide to it to find out which one I need. And it's the 4th book called Midnight's Whispers. Oh, I believe that's what it was. I know. I'm so unorganized. Midnight Whispers. Oh, the 4th book in the series. But, so I have almost the entire Cutler family series. So, and of course, it focuses on Dawn, who's the main character. And like I said, I haven't read any of these books, so who knows? Eventually, these could be turned into movies someday. But so I have Dawn. The next book after it, Secrets of the Morning. 3rd book, Twilight's Child. And then, of course, I don't have the 4th book, Midnight's Whispers. But on this Cutler family series 1, the 3rd book, Twilight's Child, has, since it's an older copy, it's one of those step back art ones. You know, where you'd always have like this little cutout in the front, but then you'd open it and you would have like a step back art of, you know, the main cover. I've seen step back art for the Flowers in the Attic book and the other ones, but on the back they have the step back art except for the 5th one and the version I have of Flowers in the Attic. But Petals on the Wind, If There Be Thorns and Seeds of Yesterday had the step back art on the back, but when you originally got them, they'd have the little cutout and then the step back art, which I think is really amazing. And then, of course, like I said, the 5th book kind of goes back in the past. So I believe that this is about Dawn's mother or her grandmother. I'm not sure because I haven't read the books yet. But again, step back art, which really, really kind of Gothic horror if you think about these illustrations. And some of them, you know, will tell you who did the cover art, and some of them won't, which is kind of weird. But this one came out like in 1993, and it was the 5th book in the series. And after that series came the Landry series. I have the 1st book from that series, Ruby, and the last book from that series, Tarnished Gold, which is, well, they kind of cut something off on it. You know, it's supposed to try to explain what's going to happen, but it cut off the top part of the back, so it doesn't even give me a name to it, so I think it's Gabriel, but, you know, I'm not sure. I hate when you find books like that. I mean, it's in pretty good condition, except for this little back corner has been taken off, but I don't know. I just hate when that happens. But again, it has that step back art. So, the other books, oh, well, this edition of Tarnished Gold has another one of those step back covers again with the artwork. So the 3 books that I'm missing in between are Pearl in the Mist, All That Glitters, and Hidden Jewel. So, but yeah, so because when I go to modern bookstores like Barnes and Noble or Books a Million, they usually always have like the Dollenganger series, or they have My Sweet Audrina. They hardly ever have any of the other older series. So it's kind of interesting to go back and get those. And I've seen them before at like flea markets and peddlers malls, but again, like hardback copies. And I just like paperbacks, like I said, because they're smaller and they're more compact. So, and also, like I said, finding these books that have like the step back art, they're just interesting to have. And most of these books, they're in good condition. So, and I got most of them at Half Price Books. So, always a good place to find books. I'm sure you can probably find them on Amazon as well, but don't knock like thrift stores or Half Price Books. Used books are good. So, so that's my B.C. Andrews collection that I have so far. So I basically need 6 more books, and then I will have 3 more series complete, and then I will be able to start reading them, because there's no reason to start reading a series if I'm going to read the first book and then I don't have like 3 books in like the middle of it, and then so there's no sense reading them yet. I could probably get started on the Cutler series, since all I am is missing the second to last book. So, but those are the books that I have for B.C. Andrews. And I had a long video last time. I guess we can do another one. Another author that I consider like a Gothic horror writer, of course, is Anne Rice. Writer of the Vampire Chronicles. And, because, they deal with vampires. That's very Gothic to me. Most of them take place in, they dabble with New Orleans, and then, they talk about, Paris, and later books, talk about, like Italy during the Renaissance, and, even like into like ancient Rome. So, but, they're vampires, so they continue on into like these, very Gothic tones, and, of course, Paris with like Notre Dame and all of its Gothic architecture. So, I have my collection of Anne Rice books right here that I have. Try to go a little bit in order. Of course, I have Interview with the Vampire, which I found at a thrift store a long time ago. And, so, because I saw the movie before I read the book, and, so I just, of course, I had to have it. So, of course, it's very meticulous and detailed, and Rice is a very prolific author, and she's very good at prose. So, of course, brief rundown of it. It starts with a writer named Daniel, who is interviewing Louis, and just writing down his life as a vampire, where he is turned by the vampire Lestat de Lioncourt, and travels through their life together, and then how they bring in Claudia, a young child, which Louis feeds from, and ends up turning her into a vampire. So she's stuck in the body of a child with the mind of a woman, and they're a family for a while, and then Louis and Claudia go off on their own to try to find more of their kind, and they end up going to Paris and meeting more vampires that are led by the vampire Armand, and so, and of course it's a very long going series, so I'm not really sure about this edition of it. Let me see if you can give me any other details. So, so it doesn't really give me any kind of indication. It says, copyrighted 1976, and first Valentine Books edition. It says May 1977. So I'm not sure if it's really that old, but if it is, it's in pretty good condition. And since when I got it, it was still in pretty good condition, and I kept it in pretty good condition. So, and then of course the next book is book 2 in our chronicles is The Vampire Lestat, which goes into talking about Lestat's background and to how he became a vampire, and it chronicles through that to the present time of like the early 1980s, where elements for this book and the next book were combined for the Queen of the Damned movie that came out. So towards the end, the vampire Lestat is a rock star, and he's throwing a concert, and an uninvited guest shows up, which goes into the next book in the series, and it is my personal favorite, The Queen of the Damned. So, what it is basically, it is the queen of all vampires, Akasha, and she ends up taking a shine towards Lestat, and it brings together all sorts of vampires from across the world to try and, rescue Lestat from Akasha, and it also throws humans into the mix, because now that Lestat's become this big rock star and has kind of like spoiled a few vampire secrets in the lyrics of his songs to the world. There are vampires that think he needs to pay for spilling these secrets, and then of course there are ones that are loyal to him. But the human world gets pulled into this world with the vampires, and there's the Talamasca, who are I guess the best analogy would be is like they're kind of like the way the Winchester brothers hunt all like these supernatural things. They're a big organization that they know about these things, but they try to keep them secret. So it's my favorite book out of the series, and I sort of kind of went a little off base with the series after that. So the next couple of books that I got were kind of more like off to the side sort of books about characters that sort of pop up in Queen of the Damned. So Anne Rice had a thing called New Tales of the Vampires, which start telling about tales about the different vampires. And the two of them that I have are Pandora and Vittorio the Vampire. So it's been a long time since I read either one of these, but those are my two Tales of the Vampires books. When I was at college, of course, I would walk through the bookstore, and like I said, if I ever saw a book with a cover that kind of a cat, it caught my eye, I would get it. So I saw this copy of Merrick by Anne Rice, and I decided that I wanted to have it. And it's actually a combination of the Vampire Chronicles and her series of the Mayfair Witches. So it's a witch-vampire crossover sort of thing. But Louis and Lestat appear in this book, and I don't know, I just saw the cover for this book, and I wanted to have it. So, of course, the way it has it listed in here is I do not have book 4 or 5, or 6, it says 6, but I don't have The Tale of the Body Thief, Them Not the Devil, or The Vampire Armand. And it's not that I don't see a lot of Anne Rice books when I'm out at the bookstore with my husband. I guess I kind of would want to get more like the used copies. Just, see what they were like when they originally came out. Because a lot of these will probably be like reprints. But, and then of course, I don't have any of the Mayfair Witch books. The Witching Hour, last year, are Tothos. And then, of course, there are her other books in this one. The Feast of All Saints, Cry to Heaven, The Mummy or Ramses the Damned, Servant of the Bones, and Violin. But, like I said, eventually I will try to get them, because it's always nice to have a full collection of books. So, and this other book I have, of course, because it had been a while since Anne Rice was writing about her vampires. She stopped writing about them for a while. And, when an author goes back and starts visiting, a character. So, like I said, the ones that I mentioned before in that copy that I had, since that there was Blood and Gold, Blackwood Farm, Blood Canticle, and then there were, of course, some other books that were not related to the vampires, and then Anne Rice comes out with Prince Lestat. And like I said, it's not that I don't like hardcovers, but, this one just, I saw it and it's like, I have to see it. So, I haven't read it yet. So, there's that, and so I can't really talk about it if I haven't read it. Anne Rice wrote some books underneath a pen name, and A.N. Roquelaure, and if anybody out there has read the 50 Shades of Grey books, you want something that's a little bit more spicy, this is much more up your alley. It is the Sleeping Beauty quadrilogy. And, well, it is something. So, of course, the first book is, what it says, it's the first of the classic erotic trilogy of Sleeping Beauty. And as I've said before, Sleeping Beauty is one of my favorite fairy tales, and again, I like reading different versions of fairy tales, especially if they're more adult or darker themed. This is definitely it. Again, I was at college with my first college roommate, and I guess we were out shopping one day, and I saw this book, and of course, me liking Sleeping Beauty and Anne Rice, I picked it up. I had no idea what I was in for when I read this book. So basically, as I kind of told in my talk about Jim C. Hines' Princess series about a more darker aspect of Sleeping Beauty. So Prince comes to the castle, and he does not wake Sleeping Beauty with a kiss. So, and since, he claims her, as the title says, he takes Beauty away to his family's land and his castle, and prince and princesses from kingdoms all around are sent as tributes to this kingdom, and a lot of kinky stuff happens. A lot of BDSM stuff. There are fetishes, there's pony play, there's a lot of stuff. So, much more eloquently written than 50 Shades of Grey, because it is written by Anne Rice, even underneath her pen name, which she wrote underneath the pen name because, of course, people probably don't think women can write stuff like this, so she wrote underneath the pen name, I guess, to have them think that a man wrote it. Written by a woman. It's written by a woman, and it's really good. So, if you are easily embarrassed, then don't fear. They have audiobook versions of it, because I have the audiobook versions of all 4 of these books on my Kindle. So, but yeah. So, and it basically goes through Beauty, maturing and having to grow up, being thrust into this much more darker world. And the course, the second book, is called Beauty's Punishment. So at the end of the first book, she tries to run away from this kingdom, and she gets sent to the village of the kingdom, where they send all the rebellious and naughty princes and princesses to try to get them, more pliant again, and sometimes they return back to the castle, and sometimes they don't. But, so she is sent there with a rebellious slave prince named Tristan, and so it kind of also switches back and forth between Beauty and Tristan's time spent in the village. So, but it says here that it's an erotic novel of discipline, love, and surrender for the enjoyment of men and women. So, if you can make it through this first one, you'll like the second one too. And then, of course, originally it was just a trilogy, and the last one was Beauty's release. So, what happens is that I can tell you from the end of the second book. Beauty, Tristan, and a few other princes and princesses are taken by a sultan from a far off land to be part of his female and male harems of slaves. And it focuses, of course, on Beauty and Tristan again, but introduces another prince named Laurent. And so they're basically taken off to a faraway country, and yeah, it's just as good as the other books. So I took off the dust jacket from this book because at the time I didn't want it to get all ruined and stuff. I still have it. It's closed up and pressed somewhere else. So ignore that phone ringing. But eventually they decided, I guess Anne Rice decided she wanted to write more about the Sleeping Beauty and what happens later in her life. And basically what it is Beauty, of course, is now no longer a princess. She is now a queen. And not to give away any kind of spoilers, but she ends up marrying Laurent. And Laurent had to go back to his kingdom because his father died, and he became king. And he went to go find Beauty and took her as his queen. So they've been ruling for a while. They get word that Queen Eleanor and the crown prince who ran the kingdom where Beauty was taken to, they have died, and in their wills they have decided that they want Beauty and Laurent to rule their kingdom. So before the kingdom was, they were sent there by alliances through other kingdoms as tributes, and most of them kind of against their will a little bit. So this time they ruled that anyone who wants to become a slave can do so of their own free will, and Beauty and Laurent will take them into their kingdom. So it goes through how they change a little bit of the kingdom's laws, but try to keep it the same because it caused Beauty and Laurent to become sort of better people and better rulers. And of course, they are still madly in love with each other, but they're now going to be ruling a kingdom where they're going to have all of these prince and princesses going around providing all these desires, and it kind of tries to show whether it's going to put a strain on their relationship. But for a sequel book, it's pretty good, and it's interesting. So if you like 50 Shades of Grey, these books are much better. Of course, they're more eloquently written, far more detailed in all the sexual things that go on. But it's not meant to be, I guess for people who don't do BDSM or fetishes or anything like kinky role playing and stuff. It'll probably be really shocking, but if you have an open mind, it's not really that stunning or too shocking. But again, like I said, if you're easily embarrassed and don't want to be seen reading these books, you can always listen to them on audiobooks. So well, like me, I read the first book in front of my roommate that I had, and I think maybe I had like this expression on my face, and she was like, "What are you reading?" And I was like, kind of like, I don't know if I should tell her what I'm reading or not. But that was then. This is now. When I'm married, I'm older, I'm more mature. I've read the 50 Shades of Grey books. I've seen the movies. And I watch a lot of horror, and nothing really shocks or surprises me that much anymore. But that is a look at what I'm deeming my Gothic horror section. I think next time, of course, we're going to start getting into a little more of these like young adult teen kind of books. And of course, there's young adult and teen fiction of now, and there's young adult and teen fiction of then, from the early 1990s. So, which one am I going to talk about? I guess I'll have to wait next time to see. So I hope I'll see you back here at the Book Nook next time. And until then, have a good day.